Hello and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. Visit openside.com for products and services that will take your Airtable to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir, one word, all caps, for a one-time $20 credit off of any purchase. This episode, we welcome Khe Hy from Los Angeles, California. Khe is the creator of the blog and newsletter Rad Reads and contributing editor at Quartz. His current ventures in writing are a sharp left turn from his previous career on Wall Street. Tired of staring at spreadsheets all day, Khe decided to quit his job in finance to pursue his entrepreneurial itch. In the ensuing months, he began blogging about the hurdles he was facing, including his own self-doubt. Writing actually helped him find his calling, creating thoughtful content about facing uncertainty and living with intention. We discuss how Khe grows his audience and how apps like Airtable help him manage Rad Reads. Khe gives us a demo of his blog editorial calendar in Airtable, where he schedules posts and corrals all his ideas for new writing projects. Check out BuiltOnAir.com for more Built on Air episodes. And while you're at it, sign up for our mailing list to get weekly updates on all things Airtable. Hey everyone, welcome to Built on Air. I am here with Khe Hy today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Zoe. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start by you just kind of, giving us a bit of an intro as to who you are as a human and what you do.
Yes. So like I said, my name is Khe Hy, and I live in LA with my wife and two daughters, Soraya and Amelie. And I guess you could think of my life as a tale of two cities. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. And what I mean by that is that this whole world of like being a creator and building things has really only been the past 3 years for me. Before that, from age 21 to 35, I was what we would jokingly call an F9 monkey, which was someone who did Microsoft Excel spreadsheets on Wall Street. And so I worked on Wall Street for a very long time in the world of investment management and investment research. I had this itch that there was something more to life. And at 35, I had an early version of my midlife crisis. And I'm like, I am not doing this for the rest of my life. And there's so much cool stuff happening out in the world. And I want to be a part of that. And I quit with no plan and started what would become a blog and newsletter and kind of launching pad for a lot of my creative work.
Nice. How was that moment when you decided to quit? What was that like?
Wow. I got chills just thinking of that. I remember it was a Friday afternoon and I had to tell my big boss, who was was a mentor and advocate of mine. And I had to tell him, like, I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. Like it wasn't 15 years, but for a long period of my life, for the doors that you've opened to me. And, but I need to do something entrepreneurial. I can't keep hitting F9. I actually don't want a computer that has F9 anymore. I want a Mac.
Right.
But I'll never forget, he said, he's like, as a fellow entrepreneur, I totally get what you're saying. And he was a very successful entrepreneur. And he said, you know what? I'm a little bit jealous myself. And it was just like cool. And so that was like the actual moment. And then there was like the oh crap moment where I left a very, very lucrative job where I was kind of like a quote unquote made person for no plan. Nothing.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of all about that perspective because, I would imagine like sometimes you might get down on yourself. You're like, why did I do this? People would have killed to be in my position or have my job. But I think that like sort of self-made or, you're like, I want to do my own thing. Like I've been just helping other people do their own thing their whole life. That's a strong pull.
And there's something like, as someone who's still trying to figure out how he makes money, there's like, I mean, I get excited for like $250 checks where I used to like blow that on, I don't even know, like it would just disappear and I didn't even know that it disappeared from my bank account.
Right. Yeah. Because
And
you're getting that set amount every month
yeah,
and you're like, whatever, I know I don't have to think about everything.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And now I'm like, every single penny of this $250 is off the sweat of my back and no one else's.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, I worked really hard for this money. I didn't just, like have,
Yeah,
15-minute coffee breaks. Like I
totally,
sat there and I did all this directly. Yeah.
totally,
Uh,
totally.
so tell us about your how kind of the twists and turns your journey took post Wall Street then as you're sitting here realizing you have to make
Yeah.
all of the decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So since I'm assuming a lot of your audience is kind of tech focused, entrepreneur focused, I think
A
that the
lot of
first
freelancers and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I think the first step was like it was actually the like classic overachiever. It's like I need a bigger challenge. And so
Right.
I actually thought I was going to start like a venture backed company in fintech because
Okay.
it's like, Wall Street, finance, you like tech, like A plus B equals C. Um, but I took a little time. I took some time to travel. We had a family version of Eat, Pray, Love. Like so, my daughter and my wife and I went to Bali for like 9 weeks, one-way ticket type stuff. And in that process, I was like, I don't want to be like that's not me. Like, being a VC backed funder is actually like probably a crappier existence than being a Wall Street analyst. And I kind of needed the space to kind of realize that. But I was like, what am I going to do? I've spent 15 years doing pretty much the same thing. What are my other things? And so I just had this like little rinky dinky newsletter, like on Tiny Letter, like 36 people, and it was just kind of like sharing interesting articles. And everyone does that now, like a newsletter is like the new blog, the new podcast, whatever.
Right.
But it was a while, it was 4 years ago, so like there was not nearly as much of it. And
Hmm.
people were like, oh, this is cool, and I would blurb the stories, but like, this is why I find this interesting. But what it turned into was like kind of like a lens into my own personal transformation using the cover of articles. Right. I was like, I find this story on Envy really interesting because I've felt it before. And
Right.
really what happened was that blurbing articles that like were speaking to me was basically like my writing prompt, like think morning pages, think whatever. And it was just like the thing that got me to start like fingers on keyboard. And I realized that it took a little while, but I was like, holy crap, I like writing. And I was kind of sorting out my like internal dirty laundry. Like basically the point of my blog was like, you probably think I'm really successful and therefore you probably think I'm really happy. And while those things are true, they are not true at my core because I'm not content. Um, and I'm actually like really, really confused and anxious about a lot of things. And here they are for you to process.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. And I think, I mean, even, talking about a sort of newsletter like that being ahead of the curve, just now, I feel like, right, 4 years later after you've started that, there's really starting to be these conversations about, how people project themselves online, how social media makes it seem like, you're like, it's a struggle, but I love it. Like every day is
Totally.
awesome. Like I'm killing it, and then, now you're really kind of just starting to get that pushback where it's like,
Yeah.
actually,
Actually.
people are, but it's like, anxiety rates are really high. Like,
Hmm.
people aren't feeling, safe and stable. So it's like, how do you really, you know, project that truth online while
Totally.
still, maintaining like people, I mean, don't want to read about people who are like, I wake up every day like feeling really anxious and scared because I don't know what I'm
Totally.
doing and I left my, solid steady job, but also being real, right? So people,
Totally.
because I think so many more people can actually really identify with the self-doubt, right, in those moments
Mhm.
than the, kind of like tiger blood feeling of like, I'm doing
I'm
awesome. And
crushing it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. And I think the difference too, I mean, when I left, I was 35. I'm not a millennial. Like,
Right.
I guess they call us the Oregon Trail generation, but
Yeah, you're
I
kind
kind
of,
of
so if you're
straddle X and
35, you're right on the edge, right?
yeah. Well, I
Between,
was 35 4 years ago,
okay,
so I'm
4
turning
years ago.
40 this
You look
summer.
young.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, I would not have guessed. So, yeah, so you're kind of like right on that like edge where you're
Hmm.
almost like Oregon Trail
Old.
generation. Yeah, not old, but like you're
Gen X.
definitely not, like
Yeah.
just Gen X.
Yeah.
So wait, what is the Oregon Trail generation? I
It
have
kind of it straddles the two, and I guess it was like a popular video game from like, I guess if you were in high school in like the late 90s.
Yeah, I'm 26 and I definitely remember playing that in school.
There you go.
It was the bomb. Um, cool. So then, you're out there, you're kind of speaking your truth and being comfortable being more honest about it. So bring us, kind of up to the present moment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it has been, I never identified as a creative person, a maker, a creator, none of those words, but you write every day. And the newsletter turned into a blog, the blog turned into videos, the videos turned into a podcast, the podcast turned into talks. Like, it's like, I'm saying it, and a lot of people have used that playbook, but the thing, hand in my heart, like that was not my playbook. The playbook was like, write and then see what happens. And I think that was like my business intuition would kick in, because like as I was writing, I'd see new opportunities,
Hmm.
and people would be like, hey, will you like come give a talk here? A lot about like money and happiness. Can you give us a talk here? And so I'm like giving the talk, but I'm thinking about like the book proposal. Like, so like,
Right.
so those pieces started to fall in play. And I mean, to put it in such a trite way, I was basically, all of my writing, which is like a couple hours a day for 4 straight years, was like the best form of content marketing for myself.
Right.
And then the question was like, well, what services do I then want to sell, because I have a captive audience? And so that has kind of like really like bounced around a lot. I spend a decent amount of time at the media company Quartz, where I'm a contributing editor on their kind of leadership and management vertical. So that's one area I spend my time. I do a decent amount of individualized coaching, specifically around the psychology of money and career transition. So like kind of makes sense, right? A
Yeah.
lot of my leave was like that $250 and leaving a Wall Street job. It's like navigating that, like what you left on the table and how
Right.
that's supposed to or not supposed to make you happy. So that's like a coaching practice, which then feeds into like some speaking gigs. And then digitally, I have like a decent patronage off of my different platforms, and I'm working on a course on financial independence.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of that too, I imagine, it's this, and you, right, being from Wall Street would probably feel this better than anyone, but it's that thing where you're like, well, how can I also reconcile, my personal happiness with sort of like what's expected from me in the world,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Especially, I imagine, when you left that job, certainly you had friends who were still in that industry and still kind of able to, live that same lifestyle, right? And you're like,
Hmm.
well, I had my, Elizabeth Gilbert eat, pray, love, soul
Hmm.
searching moment. Now I come back and I'm like, how, you're like, how do I make this money?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
wish I hadn't thrown away all of that, $250 buys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it is kind of a very yeah, introspective moment.
Yeah. And
Um,
money is a strange thing, because money cuts through, like, I mean, the obvious things like basic needs and financial security, but then where you spend 80% of your time working. And then it gets, so like think of like Maslow's hierarchy, like,
mhm,
money, obviously you need it for like the bottom part. And then the middle part is like your relationships and your craft and your autonomy and your freedom. Like, like, yes, money buys you those things, but it becomes a little murkier. And then you
Yeah,
have the tip of the spear, like self-actualization or enlightenment. Like, does money really buy you self-actualization? Like, it's a pathway towards there, but it is far. I mean, think about how many people
right.
have a lot of money and are not self-actualized.
So true. Yeah, there is all I think, there really is this kind of uh period of diminishing returns, right? Where it's like you make so much money, I would imagine that, you have to deal with problems that, being kind of like a normal middle class American, right? Never
Yeah.
come up. And then also it's like does that sort of pursuit of, just getting the Wall Street job or whatever, or getting paid, right? And America's like, that's how you become successful.
Yeah.
Is it really true? I think it's really
Mhm.
hard to kind of uh, separate yourself from, or, figure out at what point for you personally does that start to become a lie.
Totally. I mean, that is, and I think it's a lie for a lot of people, and they just don't want to admit it to themselves. And I think once you reimagine, I tell people I've reimagined retirement because I work on the things I love with the people I care about. I'm making just enough money to like make it work. Could
Mhm.
make a little bit more, but I see my kids 4 hours a day.
Right.
I surf every morning. I live by the beach. Like, I work, but I'll do this. If this is work, I'm do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's all about that balance and kind of whatever that saying goes, you work to live, not live to
Hmm.
work.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much that kind of philosophy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to talk about these things, just because, especially being a freelancer myself, right? And coming off of, I was working a fairly, nice for my age at the time, 9 to 5 job, that where you're like, oh, I can spend this and, it doesn't really matter. I don't have to, watch my finances too much. And then, the company I was working at got acquired, right? I was laid off.
Mm.
So it's, now like you, I was kind of just thrust, into this thing where I'm like, well, I've always kind of wanted to work for myself. Let me see what that's like. And it's really awesome sometimes. And then also like heavily
Mhm.
terrifying other times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And the terrifying part is the psychological part,
mhm.
right? It's like the mental part, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the second guessing, the status, like have I, and I think that, again, it's like that's how my product, quote unquote, accidentally emerged from like just wrestling with all these questions in public.
Right.
And then now I'm a coach to people trying to wrestle through these problems because like they've seen me do it, and I think that's like, again, to go back to the cheesy content marketing, but that's like cotton marketing that like that's kind of like done right.
Yeah, I mean, it works, right? Because if you connect with people on a real level, then, of course, I would rather, if I was dealing with these problems, I would rather go to someone who I already know is, in my
Hmm.
headspace and knows what I'm talking about and can teach me things, as opposed to, I think like a lot of those also harder problems, it's like, where would you go if you're struggling
Hmm.
with that? Do you take like an online, budgeting course? Do you
Yeah.
talk to a therapist? Like, where do you go to kind of deal
Hmm.
with a lot of these, issues, especially, doing a big career change, which is like scary and uncertain at any point in your life.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so really cool. We'll definitely link to your blog so everyone can
Cool.
check that out and take a look at all of your, coaching stuff and your articles and everything. But now, of course, the question we know has been coming.
Hmm.
How do you use Airtable in all of this? Where does that factor in for you and your business?
Yeah. Um, so I think as a starting point, I have always been a tinkerer. And, I, in like 1995, I taught myself HTML to make a website for the local florist as like a summer job. And so I love the internet. I love the possibility of the internet. I'm kind of a logically oriented person. So like give me like blocks and code and things like that. But I majored in computer science in college, and I was so bad at it. Like computers, I learned the hard way that making web pages and like sorting algorithms are not the same thing. Like to even lump them under, no one does lump them under the same umbrella, but I do. But I was always in that like tension point where it's like, I know how to make things, and I'm like more advanced than kind of the average, person when it comes to tech. And I can see what I want made. I think that's where the computer science part comes in.
Right.
It's like, I know the product that I want, and so I would like jerry rig spreadsheets with like 10 like triple nested if statements and conditional formatting and all that to like kind of create these like web apps for myself. And so like, for example, probably my first exposure to Airtable was I created this really complex CRM, which basically took Google Sheets and turned it from a spreadsheet into a database. I like kind of like tricking it into creating a tagging like function. I basically created a tagging function within Google Sheets with like a lot of like nested if statements. And so then I had a CRM where I had like a person's name and then like a list of 50 tags that I could search by tags. And I did that in Google Sheets, and it was like crazy ass slow. And I don't love the G Suite. Like the G Suite platform does not inspire me creatively.
Right. It's just good because it's low hanging fruit. Everyone
uses it, but it's not responsive. It's definitely not mobile friendly, mobile friendly. And it's just slow. And it's just like, it doesn't have the attention to detail that like really makes me want to create. So I try to avoid it if I can. And lo and behold, then like Airtable comes along and I'm like, oh my God, this like 15 column, like nested if statement it's actually a function. And so like at first I'm like, this is so cool. Like I just, and again, this is where like I had used SQL in the past. So like I understood how related tables worked.
Right.
But I have no desire to like write an SQL query. Right. I don't even remember how to do it.
You intuitively know, the logic of the build. You're just like, there has to be an easier way to do this. It's stupid to have to spend this much time.
Exactly. And so that introduced me to Airtable, where I basically like ported it over the CRM tool and tried to recreate it. And so I was really using it for tags. And then as I started playing with Airtable, I was like, wow, like there's like so many needs as an individual creator where you just like need to whip up something quickly to like organize stuff.
Yeah,
and
get out of your brain.
Exactly. And I was just not going to do it in Sheets. I know a lot of people who just stick to Sheets. Like I said, Sheets does not inspire me to be creative. And Airtable did, like just again with like the power, like the different options that it had, like related tables, but then like stupid simple stuff like field validation, right? Like you had to like create a formula in Excel in Sheets to do that, and they're like, no, this is an email. Like people input email addresses enough times in a form to know that like just give me the damn validation like off the top, and so like those things. And then kind of like the next level was like then Zapier. Like, oh, now we're talking, because again, like I could always see the logic behind it, but I never had the tools. So as the tools started to catch up with my logic, then I was like, oh, this is like, then it's like really started to open up doors. And so like I'm still like, Airtable is adding more features. I'm trying to do things that are more elaborate, and it is, they're like Ryan Hoover the other day wrote about like the no code movement. Yeah. And I'm like, like my entire post Wall Street career has been built off of the no code movement. And I think I'm maybe slightly ahead of the curve, other than most people, because I do have a technical like understanding and sensibility. But I just like, I'm always trying to get people to use like, I'm like, you don't use Zapier? Like, what is wrong with you? Like,
Right.
you know how much time you could save, and like, you could really go focus on the thing that you're just interested in creating. And then you don't even get really started about the people at like Wall Street. They're like, what's Slack? Like some people on Wall Street still use Lotus Notes as
Oh
email.
my gosh.
Yeah, like what
I
like
didn't
our,
even know that was still around, to be
it's
honest.
not. It's just like even like McKinsey, the consulting firm, as of like 2 years ago, used Lotus Notes because it's their enterprise
Right.
system with this little customization field that like I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
Right. And I think the thing too now, right, is, huge companies like that, they don't have because those tools, right, the sort of citizen programming, no code type of,
Hmm.
thing that's happening, those tools weren't available when they needed to build stuff. So
Hmm.
it's like to switch over to that, just it seems like just because of how big they are, they're
Yeah.
really slow to turn the ship. Whereas it's nice,
Mhm.
now working with people, who are smaller businesses or new, you can be like, let me just experiment with this. Okay, cool. I just spent, an hour and it's going to save me, 2 hours a week in perpetuity.
Totally. And it's going to be enjoyable while I do it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
like I don't want that to be lost in the conversation. It's like, yes, I could do 90% of this in Google Sheets, but I don't enjoy it. Like it doesn't make me feel good about my life.
Right. And it doesn't make you want to like open it and look at it either.
Exactly. Totally.
So I think your sort of little demo base you're going to share with
Hmm.
us is the editorial calendar for your blog, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't you go ahead and share your screen, get everything set up, and give
Cool.
us a little tour of that.
It's funny. People always ask me as a blogger, they're like, and I write every week. I write multiple things a week for years. They're like, are you ever worried that you're not going to have something to write about? And there's two answers that bloggers usually give. The first is no, because you just, as a writer, you just start to see the world differently.
Hmm.
And so, like, if I ran out of ideas, I could find something we talked about today and write about it tomorrow.
Right.
But they can't touch that. The other thing is like every story idea I write down. Um, and so I just collect like a magpie. I just collect these stories, and over time, that this is like this. I rarely go to it because I need a story idea, but I go to it to kind of recatalyze other story ideas and just to remind myself that this is what I was interested in. And so it basically starts as just like a um, I'm in grid view right now, and it's just like a list of stories. And so you see some of the columns are the name of the story, like the headline, um, the the data was entered, SEO keywords, little flags to see if they're done or in progress, just to like create some archive views. Probably the most important is the ranking system, which helps me like quickly kind of remember that like, hey, when I put this story in, I was like really into the idea. And then some tags that like help me sort creativity, productivity, money, identity, things that you would talk about in a reflective blog. Some little flags on like, can I convert this into an Instagram post? Ignore the spit column. I also keep track of like, could this be visual, like as a video or something else? And then I have a link to like related place where I could technically, so if you click here, it will fire up like an outline in Evernote. I think eventually I'd like to have it in just stay in Airtable, but like I still use Evernote as like kind of my notebook for like a lot of text.
Right.
And so this is like the basic grid view, and probably the most powerful thing that I've set up is just through a Zapier account. What email am I always in? And for me, like for creativity, it's like speed of capture. And
Right. Yeah.
so I'm walking in the park, I'm like, oh, gotta send this idea in. And so I just put the name in the subject line, and then it will just populate. It will populate the grid. And so that's like my catch, like an easy catch thing. I really, for as many things as possible, I try to automate with email based triggers, because like I'm always in email in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah.
But
It's what works for you. It's the
it's
easiest thing to get.
exactly, and it's cross-platform for me.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the grid view. I leave this page open on my desktop as I'm working, because I literally will have like 2 to 10 story ideas a day. So I leave this form open. Nothing's nothing too crazy, but it's just a really quick way to enter it in with like a little bit more meat behind it. And then, as I'm going along my day, I have different views to really help me work on this. So, I don't do a ton of SEO, but I always have a lens towards SEO. And so if you go in here, I've added in the second column are the SEO keywords that might link up to that story, and then the difficulty. And I just do it manually, but I use a tool called Ahrefs, and it's an SEO tool, and I'll just like approximate the keyword difficulty based on their report. So it helps me know that like if I'm like sitting down to do SEO,
Mm-hmm.
like this is what I should work on, right? Career freedom keywords. Title is, can the unbundled career work financially? And then it has a rank of 3. Ideally I want to work on things that are rank 4 or rank 5, but getting things to align on SEO is an extra constraint.
Right.
And then similarly, I like this one, which is what's good.
Great name for a view.
Which is basically it's simple, but it's just rank ordered the stories. So you could see on the dates that you have stories dating back from like June 20th, like it's from a body image thing that was in the podcast Dear Sugars. And then in my notes, I said, tied to this kind of concept that, a lot of people are like, once X happens, my life will begin. Like once I'm married, or once I get this promotion, or once like my body looks this way. And so that's just kind of like the crux, like the hook of that story. And so, that one probably has a link. Yep. So if you see here's the link to the podcast episode. And I think knowing myself, it's probably timestamped to the right place. And so, I don't have to go far to start writing. And so that's what's good. And I think I like newest too, which kind of inverts it just kind of like you don't always want to write about the story that you came up with like 19 months ago. Like there's a reason why you didn't write about it 19 months later. And so this just gets me into like my very, very recent mind space.
Right. What are you excited about right now?
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, this is the view that I spend the most time on, because I do think that once something kind of pops out of the 6-month window, like we're too dynamic. So it's stale.
Yeah. So do you ever kind of take a look back at, what's good or stuff you've input and you're like, I'm not excited about that anymore. Like, why did I rank this so high? Or
Totally. And what I'll actually do in that case is I'll downrank them. Mm-hmm. Or I guess my hack is to like rank it to 1. Like I'll never write a story that's ranked as a 1. So they'll just kind of like all like, and I wonder like, you may not see a lot of 1s, but you'll definitely like see a lot of 2s. Oh yeah, some of them aren't even ranked. And then you'll see a bunch of 1s and like a lot. Like I won't do 2s, like Murray Andrew rituals. Like I don't even really remember what that meant.
Right.
at the time. So, but I guess, it was tagged as happiness. So maybe it's like, oh yeah, like there's probably some kind of satisfaction that comes. Oh, Marie Andrews, not Marie Kondo. I got them confused. Marie Andrews, the illustrator on Instagram.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry, it's her creative rituals of writing, of doing a Instagram illustration every day. So that was the idea.
Right. But also it's kind of cool here too, where you've kind of figured out the minimal amount of information you need to put in this to jog your
Hmm.
memory. Like you're like, wow, okay, that was, input here in July of 2018. I'm not
Yeah,
that excited about it. What was it? Oh,
totally,
now I remember.
totally,
Without having to kind of, do a bunch of linking and, take a bunch of notes. You're like, just get it out of here, put it in, and
totally.
if I realize I'm excited about it later, I'll continue.
And I'm glad you brought that up because there's an extra, which I could probably do an even more powerful search, but the more tags that you're willing to add to something, it's almost an implicit sign of conviction, right? Because
Right.
so if one of these stories, like if you look at a 5, there's money and there's links there. So there's definitely, like, you'll see, you can almost, like, you have the heuristic yourself, like you're willing to put the work to add the metadata.
Hmm.
So, which is actually, I don't know if you're familiar with David Allen's, like, getting things done
Yeah, the
framework.
getting things done method.
That's the GTD. That's kind of one of the principles of GTD, right? Like, the more metadata you add to something, the more important it is to you.
Right, because you're willing to actually take the time to
Exactly.
get that down out of your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have this like not for blogging. I don't have a blog, but I keep like an Airtable list of interesting links and I
Hmm.
tag them. And I think I might steal your rank idea.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I kind of just have this list and it is kind of almost like a diary of whatever I was really excited about researching
Hmm.
or thinking about at the time.
Hmm.
But yeah, I like how just the star, the ranking field just really adds this like super simple kind of qualitative value to it, um, to help you figure out what's most important.
And this sounds like, this might sound weird, but I think you'll know this. Like, um, um, the fact that they're stars, like, it could just be a number that's coded, like, range 1 to 5.
Right.
But there's something about the stars that, like, it really, like, it's a visual cue. It's like like, stars are like a positively affirmed shape. There's, like, the satisfaction of, like, dialing your mouse right, to the 3, to the 2, and, like, that whoosh, like the swoosh feeling.
No, I
Like,
totally
that shit,
agree.
that stuff matters. Like,
It really does. You're right. And, the equivalent, right? And, like a Google Sheet spreadsheet would be giving it a number or like, something that's sort of not, but it's fun to
mhm,
interact with like a spreadsheet in this kind of special way. And I
totally.
something that, a few other people on the podcast have talked about is, Airtable kind of has this really great way of incorporating things like colors and stuff like that to
Hmm.
drive implicit value. So,
Totally.
like even with, if you did have a ton of tags that weren't super manageable, right? Even just you could color code them,
Hmm.
based on temperature of whatever hot topics you want to write about right now or something, and then it would be really easy for you to kind of see and look,
Hmm.
you know
Totally.
what's colored, what kind of are these categories, or
Hmm.
just there are a lot of kind of really subtle yeah, kind of interactions and things that Airtable's built in that makes you can just look at a spreadsheet like this and yeah, you have
Yeah.
views that filter things and stuff, but even just looking at all of the data in one place, you can still
Hmm.
kind of automatically see what to zoom in on at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, the power of visual cues is very, very strong. And I
Mm.
think that's where, like, G Suite, like, falls on its face, but that it's not meant for that. So,
Right. It's more of, yeah, businessy type solution.
exactly.
There's this, yeah, there is sort of this little weird kind of like pop of satisfaction and joy when you
Mm-hmm.
interact, you know, when you adjust your ranking or whatever. It's
Totally.
like weirdly satisfying for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a separate sheet, but it's super powerful where it lets me do an X post analysis on my blog posts.
Cool.
And so every time I pub in WordPress, it will grab the link, grab the tags from WordPress, put them into Airtable, and then I have I have two rankings. So it's like how good do I think how much effort did I put into the piece, and then how it was received, like basically traffic wise or sharing wise. And so then I can like calibrate like you would think people who have blogged for a long time know that effort and virality are actually tend to be inversely correlated.
Right.
And so you see that at play, but you also see that, you know, the things that you think your audience cares about are often not exactly what they care about. And like a very obvious one for me is that I write a ton about introspection, and like maybe 10 to 15% I'll write about like productivity. I don't love writing about productivity. Productivity, it's like it satisfies this like reptilian desire that we all have to like be better versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Productivity is always the most read, you know?
Right. Which is also really interesting because, you know, it is that thing where instead of, you know, really wanting to introspect, you're like, I need this quick fix. Like, if only I find this, you know, like, oh, the getting things done method, the bullet journal, like, you know,
yeah.
And I mean, I click on that.
A faster computer.
So like, even though I'm like 90% of the stuff I read is just total garbage, you know, rarely if ever have I read an article on productivity and really you know, felt like I incorporated it you know, into my life and it significantly changed but you always click for that like small percentage of things. This one
will change. This is the missing one, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's so true. It is this weird, like, perverse hamster wheel, like obsessing over like the concept of productivity instead of actually just being productive.
Yeah.
It's weird. Well, yeah, this is really cool. Thank you so much for showing us your editorial
my pleasure.
calendar. And I think you have that you have your personal CRM sort of template up on Airtable Universe. So we'll share that too with everyone.
Cool.
So they can check that out and follow you on Airtable Universe if they want to, you know, see if you release anything else. But before we sign off, tell everyone where can they go to find you if they want to contact you or check out more of your work.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me and to let me kind of share my story. It basically all starts over at radreads.co, and it's rad. It's like my homage to like surf and skate culture. And there, I would encourage people to sign up for the newsletter, which, as we talked earlier, it's not just a newsletter. It's like a full essay, blurbs, like kind of link blogging. It's really special and you know, something I take a lot of pride in. And then other than that, I'm pretty active on Instagram. So it's RadReads.co, all one word as the handle. And then my Twitter is my first name, KheMaridh, and it'll be easier to find that in the show notes.
Yes, for sure. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Khe. I've had a great time chatting with you about, you know, everything from, you know, little stupid gold stars to, you know, intense personal psychological fear and despair and everything in between. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to go sign up for your newsletter now.
Awesome. Thanks, Zoe.